I'm Robert Snyder, Manhattan Borough historian. I'm talking today with Joseph Holland, writer, entrepreneur, attorney, and ordained minister who's written 5 books. His latest book is Make Your Own History, Timeless Truths from Black American Trailblazers. It's a pleasure to be talking with you today.
It's great to be here, Rob. I'm so excited to be able to have a chance to talk to you about my new book, Make Your Own History. Thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure. How did you come to write this book?
I've had two passions for quite some time. The first, a passion for history, dating back to my days as a history major and grad student at Cornell University. And that passion has stayed with me over time as I've researched and written various subjects. My other passion, a passion for reaching out and helping people in ways that make a difference, that really dates to my early days after I finished school in Harlem, when I started and ran a homeless shelter for men in Harlem. And I learned from that experience that you can reach out, make a difference, and draw life lessons from it in order to help others as well as yourself.
And what is it about history that helps you to reach out to others, especially folks who might be living in a homeless shelter?
I've discovered that you can draw actionable insights for successful living from historical role models. And it's through the research that I did in coming up with Make Your Own History that lessons from the past can have such power in the present, to help people understand, what it is that I need to do right now that others did before me. And so in the book, I have 120 role models, mostly from the history of America, dating back even before the founding period, all the way up to the present. But I do have some contemporary figures as well. But what distinguishes the book, makes it different from traditional history books, are the success principles that rise from each of these historical examples.
What are those principles that people will encounter in your book?
One example that really excites me comes from one of my favorite historical role models, Alain Locke. He's known as the father of the Harlem Renaissance, and he's a trailblazer of compassion. And the principle for him is be creative in your compassion, because he took his skill as an academic and as a writer and decided that he was going to, and this was back in the first part of the 20th century, the 1910s and 1920s, where he was still fighting against the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow. He decided to establish a new Black self-identity. He called it the new Negro, and he became father of the Harlem Renaissance. And he was creative. It was about helping people, but it wasn't about going out and showing up at a soup kitchen. It was about, I can inspire people by writing about, whether it's poetry, whether it's straight narrative, but writing about ways to help them think differently and think in better ways about themselves. And the principle there is, just as he was creative with his compassion, you, the reader, can be creative with your compassion. Whatever your talent, skill, ability is, it may not be writing, it may be dancing, it may be artwork, just like another trailblazer, once again, from the Harlem Renaissance, Horace Pippin. He was able to use his artwork in order to, help others and inspire others. So it's about being creative with your compassion.
Yeah, I'm struck by all the time you spent working in Harlem and how Harlem figures so much in your book. What other African communities, African American communities, do you touch on in the book that folks come from?
The 120 trailblazers come from all over the United States. Yes, I do feature Harlem in the Harlem Renaissance, but there's, for example, Mary Ellen Pleasant. She's a trailblazer of industriousness because when the California gold rush broke out in the 1840s and 1850s, she moved to California. She was an entrepreneur and she was able to not only gain wealth for herself, but use that wealth to build the California Underground Railroad. And she became known by historians as the Harriet Tubman of California because of her great work in helping slaves gain freedom on the West Coast, right? So we have all of those various trailblazers at work. And one of my favorite, I'll just share this quickly.
Sure.
My own father, Jerome Brudd was his nickname, Holland. He was the first Black football player at Cornell, became an All-American, and that set up a career. This was back in the 1930s. So even though the pro teams wanted him, he could not play professional football because of the color line in professional sports. Went on, got his PhD, became a college president, and then a United States ambassador. And another trailblazing moment, he became the first African American member of the board of the New York Stock Exchange.
Whoa. You must have done a lot of research on this book. Where are some of the places and sources that you used?
Well, dating back to my days as a grad student, getting my master's at Cornell, I learned that you can go into biographies, even autobiographies. That's really the best place, to find out about these individuals. And then, I have to confess, different from when I was in school decades ago, the online resources, help to make the research a lot more available when you can Google a name or a source and things come up. But it was a balance, Rob, between these individuals and what they said that represented an inspirational and actionable insight for the readers. And so I do very often quote from these trailblazers, and those words that I quote in the book provide inspiration for the readers.
When you were working on this book, were there any teachers that you had, individuals that you knew, books that you read that were particularly inspiring to you, that pushed you to go forward with this project?
I did research when I was in school on Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois. These were late 19th century, early 20th century African-American leaders. And I did some research. I wrote an honors thesis on that period of time. And I was able to, go back and look at some of my notes, and both Booker T. Washington and W. Du Bois are trailblazers in make your own history. Rob, I know you're a professor at Rutgers University. And I have to confess that I had some professors, history professors, when I was at Cornell, who were such an influence to me. I look at them as planting seeds that this book is a blossoming of the seeds that they planted many decades ago. There's Professor Walter Lefebvre. He's no longer with us. There's also Professor Larry Moore, who I'm still in touch with. In fact, I reached out to him about the book, and he was able to read it and write something about the book and send it to me. And then Professor Robert Harris. And I think about those three in particular because it wasn't only about being in their class and taking notes about what they were teaching, but it was about being inspired by their example. And that gave me the passion for history that led to my writing of Make Your Own History. I'd love to give this example because this shows how just living with this knowledge, can then be transformed into a creative narrative like I developed. I used to love to go and study at the Schomburg Library, which is in the heart of Harlem. And it turns out Arturo Schomburg is one of the trailblazers in my book because when he was a little boy, one of his teachers told him, "Oh, don't read about Black history. It's not important." And this challenged him to begin his own study. And he became a trailblazer because he collected books and articles. And over time, it became such a broad and distinguished collection that years after he began it, the New York City Public Library acquired the collection and established the branch in Harlem. This is the New York City Public Library branch in Harlem as the Schomburg branch of the library. And today, because it's grown over time, it has the largest collection of Black historical documents in the world.
You said to me once before something that I completely agree with, which is that Black history is American history. Could you share some thoughts on why this is so and why it's so important?
One of the reasons that this book is vital is because it is a retelling of the American story. And it tells it through a lens of American ideals, which from the founding of America focused on virtues as a foundation for American goodness and strength and integrity, as well as the collective good. And this book looks at Black trailblazers, but the important part is that it emphasizes more the content of one's character than the color of one's skin. And that's why it's a clarion call to individuals of all races and society in general to acknowledge the richness of America's past and to draw success principles, life lessons that they can apply for success in the present.
We live in a time in the USA where there are lots of divisions and there are lots of disputes. Why is it important for people to read your book in this time, in this age?
Rob, this book is so important in this time because its truths about these trailblazers and the lives of goodness that they lived shines through the dark cloud of historical controversy. by striking an important balance. It doesn't ignore the suffering that these historical figures had to endure. It acknowledges and articulates that suffering, but it shows how they were able to use principles and values and virtues, whether we're talking about courage or self-discipline or compassion or perseverance. That's just 4 of the 12 virtues that define the chapters. They used these core values in order to overcome adversity and attain greatness. And that's really the key. Rob, it's really important that though this book features Black trailblazers, it's really not about the color of one's skin. It's about the content of one's character. Yes, we learn what these African American historical figures did, but it goes beyond what they did to how they did it and the values and the virtues that they lived, which empowered them to overcome adversity and to attain success and greatness. And that's what we need to draw from the historical examples, that the principles are universal and timeless. And as they applied them in the past, we can apply them in the present in order to move forward into a bright future for our own lives.
Joe, where can people purchase this book? How can they get a copy?
Rob, they can get it anywhere books are sold. Yes, online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other places online, but also in bookstores, at Target, at Walmart, at Barnes & Noble. We're really fortunate that the book is widely available.
As it should be. I'm Robert Snyder, and I've been talking with Joseph Holland, the author of Make Your Own History, Timeless Truths from Black American Trailblazers, published by Kensington Books. Thanks very much for speaking with me.
Thank you so much, Rob. I've really enjoyed talking to you about my book, Make Your Own History.
I'm Rob Snyder, and I've been speaking with Joseph Holland, the author of Make Your Own History, Timeless Truths from Black American Trailblazers, published by Kensington Books. Thanks very much.